Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, August 7th, 2020. Time for yet another show, and plenty to catch up on, of course, as usual. Friday, before a weekend-long golfing jaunt by the president, of course, and that has already begun, as a matter of fact. He arrived at his New Jersey golf resort yesterday, because there's nothing important happening and nothing that requires his presidential attention, or nothing that can get better by applying his presidential attention anyway. I guess that part is probably true. Of course, there is a pandemic still raging across America. We are at 162 and will shortly reach 163,000 dead, according to the Worldometer's counts that we monitor here on the show and elsewhere around the world. But yeah, on the verge of 163,000 deaths, just now yesterday passing over 5 million cases here in the United States. And of course, if you listen to the president, you know what causes those 5 million cases. It's testing. When you test people, they get the virus for the very first time, and they would have been perfectly healthy if you had simply not found out that they had the virus. Apparently, an attitude not uncommon among those whose job it is to apparently bring us back safely from the pandemic. Georgia schools opening to, more than anything else, opening to the viral distribution of some photos taken. We mentioned them the other day in the, Paulson County, that one of the students snapped some pictures of what it looks like in the hallways in between classes, where they're having about 10% compliance with the mask-wearing suggestion. And I've seen a lot of hay made, quite properly, about those mask-wearing suggestions down there in Georgia. The word is that it is simply impossible to enforce a mask mandate among the school kids in Georgia. It's simply a suggestion, and it would be impracticable for them to actually police the thing. But we were reminded pretty quickly by recent graduates and some not-so-recent graduates, I guess, of Georgia schools and from schools around the country with similar policies. But it's the women who have reminded us very quickly, it's not really so much that you can't enforce it, it's that you choose not to. Because my recollection, some of these folks who had graduated from Georgia schools said, was that you were pretty willing and pretty adept at enforcing dress codes, at least for the women, when it came to the length of skirts, the length of shorts, I believe they also mentioned exposed bra straps, and the width of tank top shirt straps themselves. So, apparently this was something that they were willing to impose as a real restriction on the young women in their school system, and the girls, young enough, in their school system. But whether or not you have something over your face, gosh, I don't know how we're going to enforce that. Of course, they carried around rulers to check the length of skirts and shorts, and were monitoring whether or not they could see young women's bra straps and taking notes about that. So I don't know. Somehow, I guess not as interesting to them somehow to enforce this rule, and I've seen it repeated a number of times, and I don't mind passing it on either. So anyway, yeah, the story is that where do we find this one? I think I was just flipping around and saw, I think, a TMZ story on it. Did I keep it open on my phone? Everyone's reporting it, of course, and the latest news is that the student who took the photo of the extraordinarily crowded and mostly maskless hallway was suspended for doing so. And I had a feeling that might come to that. I mean, it's obviously pretty ridiculous, but they can find room for it in the letter of the law, such as it is, the rules of the school system, I'm sure. One of the problems, that immediately jumped out was, there's a bunch of kids in this photo who didn't really give their consent to having that photo circulated, and okay, that actually is sort of a problem. They probably could have taken a moment to let's say, pixelate the faces that were visible in the photo. But yeah, this was a spur of the moment thing. It probably could have waited a little bit, but obviously the student who took the picture and circulated it was alarmed with the situation and wanted people to know, why wait, really, to let people know that there's a dangerous situation going on. There was a letter from the school superintendent, apparently, explaining what was going on and why the students were being suspended. I think not a letter to the student per se, but a letter to all the parents explaining what was going on. Pretty weak explanation or they said that there was some context. And one of the problems was they said that this photo was circulated without context. And you see, the context says it all. The context, as it turns out, is, yeah, that happened. That's your context for you. And it happened, and it will happen again. They're basically relying on, and you know what? This is not entirely out of keeping with actual medical advice, let's say, but I think the medical advice probably was given without context too. But the idea here is, well, they have a lot of students, and they're doing their best to keep them socially distanced during class times. That is to say, when they would be seated next to or within close proximity of others for an extended period of time. But they're relying very heavily on that concept that was questioned not so long ago by our good friend and faithful listener, Asparagus Zucchini, who questioned in his own audio essay, what is it about the 15-minute threshold that makes us think that this is the minimum exposure necessary in order to contract the coronavirus and the COVID-19 disease? And it's just guesswork, I'm sure, but the schools are relying on it. They're saying the fact that kids are packed shoulder to shoulder, and in fact, as this student who took the photo told TMZ, that they're close enough to be pushing and shoving in the hallways, and the instance that she photographed at such a traffic jam in the hallways that they were at a complete standstill. But the superintendent of schools says, well, remember, the infection risk comes from being in close proximity to someone carrying the virus within 6 feet for 15 minutes. And nobody's stuck in the hallways like that for 15 minutes. We're trying to hustle them from class to class as quickly as possible, at which point, once they get to their class, we distance them as much as possible. Haven't seen a picture of what it's like inside the classrooms. Don't know if the student who took the picture agrees that they're appropriately distanced inside the classroom. But I guess you could make the argument that no, they're not really going to be that close together for 15 minutes. But it would be an awful lot better if they were wearing some masks, and they could put a little bit of work into staggering the schedules such that I suppose classes didn't just jam up the halls that way. I don't know exactly how you would build it, but then again, you could come to the conclusion that, hell no, we can't open these classes and open these schools safely and keep appropriate distance. And by the way, it'll be very interesting to see, well, one, whether anybody sticks by the 15-minute rule. It may be that the medical professionals who designed it might say, well, we weren't talking about throwing yourself into a mosh pit for 14 minutes and saying it was okay. The idea is that would raise your risk of exposure to a point where you could reasonably expect to come away infected. You could just get lucky if you're standing in a jam-packed hallway of kids pretty much all the same size, heading in every different possible direction and breathing all over each other for 2 minutes. Still not a good idea. Not sure how the schools open and handle that, but then, the answer is don't open, and then you won't have to handle it. But you know how it is in this country, and we've decided that that's the only way to somehow save the economy, even though the rest of the world managed to save the economy in a completely different way. Speaking of the economy being saved or not saved, I suppose we're now told that we're supposed to be celebrating unemployment hovering over just over 10%, because it ain't 20%. Because because that's the job numbers today. Apparently a little bit of a recovery, a smaller number of people claiming that they've lost their jobs permanently than was once expected, but still millions and millions out of work and no real relief in sight for those who are out of work because of the pandemic and expect to continue to be out of work because of the pandemic for quite some time. No deal so far, and the Senate out on their long weekend. All right, so getting around now to the new purpose of Friday, as we're going to redefine it here on the show. Fridays, at least summer Fridays and through the election Fridays, we've got a special treat for you, a special treat for me and my vocal cords in particular, where Fridays are always kind of a tough day, and it pays to have another voice here, both for me and for you, the listener, today and for Fridays for the foreseeable future through the election. It will be Ian Reifowitz joining us, with the notable exception of a vacation coming up at the end of the month. But Ian will be joining us to give his take on the election and the events surrounding it, giving his historian's eye to things, and as a matter of fact, also on Fridays, largely in coordination with his new pieces being posted over at Daily Coast. So, why don't we do the way we do it with Ian? Of course, we give him a call. He's standing by, and that means me scrolling around looking for his number in my Skype interface here. But here it is. Let's initiate that call and pick up our conversation. We'll hear all the nice, fun ringy-dingies first. And there we go. Good morning, Ian. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you, Dave?
Okay. I'm okay so far. No COVID here, as far as I can tell, in the house. Anyway, I've
good. You didn't see any crawling around on the floor?
No, I didn't. And I've ordered one of those online virus enlargers that guarantee that you'll be able to see it. So $99.95. I bought it straight from Thailand, as a matter of fact.
If you order in the next 10 minutes.
That's right. $109.99. And Americans are adept at understanding when they get a good bargain. So,
I did catch your Thailand, though. That was nice, the Thailand.
I had forgotten to bring that up. That and the fact that I guess Dinesh D'Souza has spent the last day insisting that I don't know what real men say Thailand, I guess, is what he's actually trying to argue, that English speakers have it all wrong, or so. I'm not even sure what his point is supposed to be, except that Donald Trump has it right and the whole rest of the world is wrong, pronouncing it Thailand the way most people have said it since forever. I don't know what the Thai language prefers, but you know what? If it really was Thailand and he said it, it wasn't because Donald Trump is a sophisticated international world traveler. It was because he saw TH and said, "I know how you say that, Thailand." Right along with Yosemite.
I think it was something about Dinesh D'Souza being a Thai man. Maybe
that could be it. You never
who the
know.
hell knows with these guys?
I don't know, but he should go back to prison just for the idea of trying to justify this thing. One of the many.
Yeah, I've written about him. Don't get me started.
Okay.
Do a little Google search of him and me. On Daily Coast, I've called him out a liar a couple of times. But he literally, don't get me started. He lied directly about something that Obama wrote in Dreams from My Father, and said that Obama was saying the literal exact opposite of what he was saying. And I knew that because I'd read it cover to cover and gone into great depth about it for my book. So he is not only a convicted liar, he's a liar on the Ian Reifowitz Daily Coast history of blogging.
Yes, well, I can believe that, and I believe I have gotten you started on this, though you implored me not to. It was too late.
Blame it on the thighs.
Yes, why not? And you could do it. You can do an entire segment on it, I'm sure. But I'm not gonna. Well, I think the best idea here is don't let Dinesh D'Souza run your day. That's
very
not worth
good advice
anyway.
for anybody,
including Dinesh. So okay. Well, what we as I was explaining to everybody, and maybe you can clarify what's going on too. But we have the good fortune to have you for the summer and through election time, which is fantastic. Of course, gives us a very interesting and different angle on our regular elections coverage. Like with Greg, we focus on the polling. With Joan, on a lot on Capitol Hill and what goes into the messaging for the election from the electoral side. And now with your historical and thematic eye on things, and as I was mentioning in the Morning Post, for the author of the Tribalization of Politics and the how the rhetoric of Rush Limbaugh and others, as you have noted, paved the way for Donald Trump. Now that we're trying to pave the way out of Donald Trump, I'm pleased that we'll have your commentary going forward on this. And you've got a new piece that I know you'd probably like to feature. And did this go up already? Yeah, it did. Okay, so sometimes it takes a little while longer to get your pieces through the editing process. I know the last one was a monumental piece. This one a little bit shorter, easier to do.
Yeah, this one was only about 2,000 words. I think the one before clocked in like 3,500.
It was all right. But and this is an event that got an awful lot of coverage, both around the media and even on the show, but from a slightly different angle. Obama's eulogy of John Lewis, and now I think the new angle on it that we haven't covered before, the right-wing response to it, highlight the power of his legacy. So we've got that new piece under consideration. It was very interesting to watch right-wing response to it, and I saw a lot of coverage of it. You know what I didn't see a lot of discussion of, but it reminded me right away of it was like they were trying to recreate the right-wing response to the Paul Wellstone Memorial. To demonize Democrats. How dare you discuss politics at a person who had made politics his life's funeral? I think I constructed that poorly, but I think you get the idea.
Right. It would be as if you had a funeral for a great athlete and you didn't talk about sports at his funeral.
Right. Sports, that would be inappropriate. It's a funeral. You need to talk about, I don't know, something, a celebration of his life. Well, that's what would we discuss at a celebration of the life of John Lewis? I don't know.
Racial justice?
Yeah. No. He would never have approved of that. He would want us to distract ourselves. Probably his favorite color or something like that.
Fashion sense.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, so it surprised me a little bit. I guess it more surprised me that there wasn't more discussion of the attempt to Wellstone the John Lewis memorial, but I don't know whether maybe they don't remember that was a fairly successful effort on their part, actually, and it sort of I think went down in mainstream history as that something horrible had gone wrong at the Wellstone Memorial. But
yeah, I mean, it was just a brilliant example of the but her emails type of media coverage that we have sometimes, right? If the media sees something that they haven't seen before, and the right-wing media is united behind it, then they're able to really dominate coverage. At least over a short period of time right before an election, when everybody's sort of, I shouldn't say everybody, but when too many in the quote unquote liberal media are on their special guard of the guard of both sidesism, that I've talked about and that I've written about before. We have to make sure that nobody can ever say we didn't favor the liberals, so we'll spew complete crap, falsehood, right-wing rhetoric about liberals because we have to report, everything that both sides are saying. So again, you get this, example of Democrats say 2 + 2 is 4, Republicans disagree.
Yes, right.
But yeah, no, what they did to Wellstone was disgusting. I don't think, here the media didn't fall for it, which was, was good. Maybe because they'd seen that movie before, and I don't think they'd fall for it again if Hillary Clinton ran for president again and had another email scandal. But literally, it almost has to be the same exact thing that happened before for them not to fall for it.
Yeah, I guess
the question is, how will they? And I do want to talk about the Obama's eulogy piece, but how will they handle it? And I think they're going to be okay. But how will they handle it when the Republicans have an official launch of some kind of official sounding investigation of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and Ukraine sometime in the next few weeks? We know Bill Barr is going to announce some kind of investigation. We've already seen Senator Ron Johnson, the genius from Wisconsin, announce, take some steps and issue some subpoenas, I believe, to try to get the idea out there that Congress, with a capital C, is investigating the Bidens and Ukraine. There's going to be some kind of investigation coming out from the Mr. Durham, who Barr and Trump appointed to pretend that there was something wrong, something seriously wrong in the way that Trump was investigated over, not Trump, but the Russiagate investigation, the WikiLeaks, during which serious things happened, right?
Yeah.
Bob Mueller indicted 13 Russian nationals, beyond what the House did with Trump and impeachment. That was real. So the question is, will the media, jump and say, "Oh no, the Bidens are under investigation," or will they have the intelligence and the perspectives to say, "No, the whole point of what Trump did with President Zelensky of Ukraine was to get the announcement that somebody who seemed independent was investigating Joe Biden."
Yeah.
That itself was misinformation. The announcement of the investigation is misinformation. So if Barr or Republicans in the Senate announce some kind of similar investigation, it is similarly misinformation. That's how the media has to handle it. So far, so good on that front, but we'll see how they handle something out of the Justice Department. They should remember that they've even seen that movie with the Comey letter in 2016 coming out of a Justice Department. But that was different because obviously that was not, that was Comey being stupid, not Comey looking to hand the election to his boss, who was Barack Obama, I guess, at the time. This would be this would be not just stupid, but nakedly partisan. We'll see.
We will. I guarantee we'll certainly see it. It'll just be a question of whether, hopefully, You're right, and if having seen it before, maybe the press will not be so keen on rerunning it. Although, I suppose they've made that mistake as well in the past. But maybe because it's not unique and they feel like they've already given it its due, they won't have to feel like they treat it this way so seriously again. But
right. Well, I mean, my hope is that the most important result of impeachment is that it has inoculated the American people and the media to the fact that any charge that Hunter or Joe Biden did something corrupt in Ukraine is BS and is Trump misinformation. That's the most important thing that impeachment did, probably. Forget I mean, we knew he wasn't going to get removed by the Senate. That was very, very, very important, and Nancy Pelosi and her team and Adam Schiff and the rest of them really did a service to the American people and to American democracy by inoculating our minds against the charge of the Bidens and Ukraine. Very important.
And maybe even Donald Trump knows it, which is why he's had to go to Plan B. Joe Biden will hurt God. Which is, I don't know where you go after that. That's kind of the mic drop of charges, I think.
Yeah, well, Mr. Upside Down Bible can say what he wants about God. I really don't think anybody's going to care.
Right. Well, and he's about to go golfing, and it's storm season, and I'm just saying, I've seen Caddyshack, and I know what can happen. That was a documentary.
I was so hoping that's what you were thinking. That image of the lightning strike. Oh my God.
See, it's no coincidence. Some cosmic force has put that image in both our minds at the same time.
Yes, we men of a certain age have seen certain movies.
I think that's true too. Yeah. All right. Well, maybe that's probably a better explanation than supernatural forces. However, okay, yes. You know what? We've had a good time, but I've used up most of our first segment. We'll say that we'll start introducing the concept now and getting ready for our second segment, in which we'll spend time on the actual piece that you meant to focus on. I apologize for taking you, but let's see. We've got about a minute or so before we start playing our break music, and a minute and a half, 2 minutes before we go out. Do you want to start with this now, or are there other items from around the morning's news roundup that you'd rather?
Well, why don't we leave it for after? Yeah. I do want to mention that jobs report.
Okay, sure.
The key, the key, and not that I'm the great economist, and our friend Meteor Blades really always does a great job of analyzing these. But the key is that even though the number of new jobs added is a positive number, and it seems like a very big number at 1.8 million, it's a reduction from the previous month of June, where I believe it was about 4.8 million jobs added. So the point is that things, the goodness is already starting to weaken. And let's hope, obviously, we want things to go well. We want there to be jobs, but our concern is that, one of the, a summary I read said that the easy jobs to add were added in May and June.
Okay.
It's going to be harder now. So the trend is in the wrong direction. The rate of growth is in the wrong direction. If it goes from 4.8 million jobs added in June to 1.8 million jobs added in July, and then that number keeps going down or getting closer to zero, we're in real trouble. There's the lead article in the New York Times today, I thought is pretty shocking. It says the headline is, the U.S. is alone among peers in failing to contain the virus. And it goes through, we're literally the only wealthy country in the world that is failing to do this. And that's why the economy isn't bouncing back. You don't open the economy. You have to fix the virus so that you can open the economy. It's not the other way around, but Trump never understood that.
Well, he's gotten a lot of things entirely backwards. But all right, we'll be back in 2 minutes to wrap up those thoughts and head into the article. Was that actual paper I heard, the page turning? Wow, unbelievable. You heard it here first. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Roots Radio. We've had our break, a chance to regroup. We're here with Ian Reifowitz, who's got a new piece up on the front page. I guess, I see it looks like it went up yesterday. Is that right, from when it was made front page? Or Yes. Okay, so it's there. You don't have to wait for it. Sometimes we preview these things, and who knows? We may have something else to preview coming up, but the discussion may spark a new piece. Obama's eulogy of John Lewis, though, is the piece from yesterday, and the right-wing response to it highlight the power of his legacy and some interesting thematic notes from this one. As usual, really, no surprise. But you want to try and take us through what motivated this and how it applies to election themes that will be emerging. I see. I guess we've got a situation once again where Joe Biden his critics and his outright opponents continue to press the idea in the hopes that it'll catch on in the press and the mainstream that he's still not in sync with the black community, which I guess is aimed at undermining one of his great strengths, which is his working partnership with Barack Obama, our first black president, and that this is somehow supposed to delegitimize him with the black community. Not something I see having much chance at taking root, especially with Donald Trump as the Republican nominee. But it gives it some current context in today's morning headlines, even the ones that the Republicans themselves are trying to generate, but not necessary to connect the two, but it connected in my mind. Do you want to take us through the piece, though, a little bit and tell us what goes up?
So, yeah, when I saw President Obama's eulogy, I mean, obviously it has, important policy implications, and Mark Sumner did a great piece for Daily Kos about that. And so I wasn't going to write, another summary of the policy implications. For me, as a historian, and then and thank you for mentioning my most recent book. My older book was about Obama himself and his ideas on American national identity, and part of that is the way he talks about American history as shaping a national identity, which is really, in some ways, the way he sort of, for me, really grabbed me. Not just his speech in 2004, but his remarks the night he won the Iowa caucus in 2008, where he was almost acted like a history professor, and he made this amazing set of remarks with a narrative of American history that integrated the kinds of things that traditionally, maybe politicians would talk about when they talked about American history, World War II, the Revolutionary War, blah, blah, and he integrated into them things like the Civil Rights Movement, abolition, and other justice movements. Maybe that's obvious to progressives like you and me, but I don't think it wasn't something that I'd heard a politician doing before. In any case, this is something that Obama really, I think has made a hallmark, and it was one of the things I wrote about in the book. It's why I call the book Obama's America. It's his conception of America, and he did this beautifully throughout his presidency. He updated things as they came along, and I remember in the second inaugural, he talked about a series of place names. He did Seneca Falls with a typical alliteration: Seneca Falls, Selma, and Stonewall. And integrated that into a narrative with some of the more traditional events, integrating women's rights, civil rights for African Americans, and gay rights into this sort of pantheon of most important American events. And this is this was a theme that I wrote about in talking about the eulogy, is this historical narrative that he wrote, that he presented, and I I'll go through that, but I won't, in a little more detail. But I'll mention also that it's as I said, it's language that can help Joe Biden as well, and it's also language that Joe Biden has used. He's obviously learned a few things from Barack Obama over the years, and you saw some of this on July 4th when Biden released this wonderful little 2-minute video, which I think really contrasted with Donald Trump's discussion, if you want to call it that, of American history at Mount Rushmore, which was really disgusting, frankly. And without going into too much detail, Biden really did a nice job tying together, in an Obama-esque way, the American Revolution, the Black Lives Matter movement, civil rights movement, women's suffrage movement, and LGBT equality activists. So, not to let Biden steal Obama's thunder, but Biden, he clearly gets this too. And so this is what Obama did, and it's the highlight of his history lesson during the eulogy was his naming of John Lewis as another founding father, which I think was brilliant. I don't want to read from the speech, but I'll just mention that Obama has this great section where he talked about America being built by John Lewis's, and he says, when we do finish that long journey toward freedom, whether it's years from now or decades or even centuries, John Lewis will be a founding father of that fuller, fairer, better America. And this is just brilliant, just brilliant, because what he does in that section, right, is put John Lewis, of course, up there in the pantheon with Washington, Jefferson, Ben Franklin, brilliantly, really. Recognizing that America is a work in progress. And this is really the distinction between his vision, the John Lewis, Obama, Biden vision, and Trump's. If you listen to what Trump said on July 4th, he basically presented America as already perfect, having perfected our union. No more work to be done, no more progress to be achieved. We're all good here on the front of achieving the all men are created equal, that ideal that's laid out at our founding. And what Obama has long recognized is, he said we've made progress, things have gotten better, but better isn't good enough. We're not there yet. Well, John, when we get there, we're going to get there because of people like John Lewis, and he's at the very top of the list. So this is a brilliant way of honoring John Lewis, but also of talking about this historical narrative. And then what he does, Obama, in the speech is he goes into quite a bit of detail about this historical narrative, and he puts John Lewis and the people who marched with John Lewis in the 60s, he puts their actions as, and granted, this is something that obviously Martin Luther King and John Lewis did throughout their own lives. He places their actions as directly within the American tradition. They're trying to push America to live up to its ideals. They're not, in some way, essentially, they're not rebelling against the American tradition. They're the ones trying to uphold it. And this is something that civil rights and racial justice activists have done, for a long time. And I've written about this. It goes back to, somebody like David Walker in the 1830s, an African-American writer, political activist, Frederick Douglass, as I write about, on July 4th. Martin Luther King has done this. Other activists from Harvey Milk, Barbara Jordan, on down the line, they always say, hey, America, live up to your own traditions. But that's very different from saying, America, your traditions are bad. We're going to get rid of them. That's not a smart move politically. It's one that will alienate people. And it's there maybe on the fringes of if you want to call them the fringes of the left, but it's not, something that Democratic politicians do. And it's not something they would be smart to do. Obama gets that. And there's a reason why Obama got himself elected president twice using this kind of way of talking about our history. It's because it works. It's also accurate. It is
that's
accurate.
Nice. It has that benefit.
Right. It does have a benefit. And so President Obama talked about the Bloody Sunday marchers and John Lewis, and he connected them directly to the Black Lives Matter marchers and movement of today. And in doing so, he's putting them specifically, again, inside the American tradition, inside that tradition of perfecting our union. And he's very explicit. He says, in 1965, you had the marchers who are essentially the pro-American people, the people trying to get America to live up to its traditions. And then you've got Bull Connor and you've got George Wallace, and they're the villains, right? So if John Lewis is the hero, they're the villains. And today, the movement for Black Lives are similarly the heroes, and the people standing opposed to them, even though he doesn't mention Trump by name, the people who are trying to today suppress the vote, undermine the postal service, as he said, in the run-up to a mail-in ballot heavy election, people, the federal government sending agents to use tear gas against batons. They're the enemies. They're the villains, just as Bull Connor and George Wallace were in the 60s. So John Lewis is a founding father, and his allies in the 60s were the heroes, and the Black Lives Matter movement today are the heroes. Just like Bull Connor and George Wallace were the villains, and just like today Donald Trump and the Republicans who are undermining our democracy are the villains. I mean, this is a brilliant formulation of American history. And it's important, it's politically smart, it's inclusive, and it's accurate. So we want to have – the way we talk about history is so important. We want to be able to talk about history in a way that brings the American people together, so that they can see the broad swaths of the American population, not just white male Christians, see themselves reflected in their history, but not just see themselves reflected in a kind of a tokeny way. I mean, Trump had this on July 4th, had this sort of Garden of Eden or something or other of American heroes with a lot of statues, and he had a handful of non-white males, and that's great. But there was no vision there unifying the American people of every background. When Barack Obama is talking about John Lewis as a founding father in a meaningful way, he's not only saying to African Americans, yes, we recognize that African Americans are heroic figures. He's doing something very important in two directions. He's getting, the people who for whom founding fathers, and I think this should be most people, we recognize founding fathers are really important for our history. Okay, great.
Yes.
And we know who they are, Washington, Jefferson, Franklin, etc. He's saying John Lewis is with the founding fathers as in terms of importance. But he's also saying to people who might be somewhat alienated by the founding fathers, he's saying the founding fathers are with John Lewis, right? So to some people he's saying, we know you love the founding fathers, make room for John Lewis with the founding fathers. To others he's saying, we know you love John Lewis, make room for Washington and Jefferson and Franklin alongside John Lewis. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And that's how you build a nation. That's how you strengthen a national community. That's how you create inclusive bonds that move in both directions between white and black Americans, between Americans of all ethnicities, because that's what we have to be. We have to be one people, but we have to be one people in a way, not just that we're one people, we don't care about any problems. No, we have to be one people in that we overcome the obstacles, the barriers, the villains that are stopping us from achieving the vision of the founders, which is also the vision you have with people like David Walker and Frederick Douglass and Lincoln at the Gettysburg Address and Martin Luther King and all of the people who have fought to make America really great by making it live up to its own ideals. And so this eulogy does those things, I argued, in a really powerful way, and it's why the response to it was so harsh, why Trump Trump is what Trump is. He's a narcissist. Trump's response was ridiculous. He does two things, right? He says, "Oh, Obama's an angry black man." He literally used the word angry. He didn't use black, but he goes to that sort of time-tested trope of the angry black man. He says, "Oh, Obama's angry. Oh, he's so angry." And then when asked about John Lewis's legacy, he says, "Oh, well, he didn't come to my inauguration." I mean, literally, he can't think of anybody outside of what have you done or not done for me or to me. It was so important. He actually had to mention that John Lewis didn't go to his inauguration twice. He mentioned it twice within 30 seconds. I mean, absurd.
Hugely important to him, obviously.
Right. And so, there were other people who responded. Our old friend Stephen Miller, the racist inside the White House, was very upset about the eulogy. Tucker Carlson, I refer to him, white nationalist talking head Tucker Carlson. He actually made Stephen Miller look classy. I said, which is really shocking. And Tucker said, imagine of the Obama eulogy, imagine if some greasy politician showed up at your loved one's funeral and started throwing around stupid partisan talking points. I mean, we talked about this with not talking about football at a football player's funeral, but that's really disgusting what Carlson said.
Calculatedly.
But I want to focus on the positive, which is that this eulogy really did something, I think, powerful and offers, a reminder if he needed it, and I'm not sure that he needed it, to Joe Biden and to Democrats, really progressives everywhere, that this is the way we need to talk about our history in order to win elections, which are the things we need to do in order to gain the power to change the laws and change the policies that we have to change. It's all about, a process. You're not going to change the laws and change the policies unless you win the elections to get in position to do so. Then when you get in those positions, activists have to keep the pressure on, even on progressives. That's important as well. But you can't get to step 3 without getting to step 1 and step 2 first.
Well, it was a very powerful lesson in how to do that. It was a great and it could be used a number of ways. The speech not only as for historians and for political science analysis, but it makes a great crystalline example of speechcraft and framing, which is not something I'm always all that enthused about, but I understand is it's got a hugely important role to play in persuasive rhetoric. And I mean, I've been instructed on it. It's not something I've been particularly adept at implementing in my own rhetoric, but I do recall being explicitly taught by people who were held out as experts in the field that there is this particular exercise of the circle drawing exercise, or drawing the circle of who's on the inside and who's on the outside of these circles of inclusion, and that the idea is to demonstrate that you can include the audience in your greater and more important circle. The idea of setting up and framing John Lewis as a founder and doing it in the way you described, that not only for those of you who recognize in your own worldview only the founders as the founders, this opens the door to the admission of John Lewis and other new actors. You don't have to have been a white man in the 1700s to be a founder, and opens the door similarly for those who have their skepticism, and justifiably have skepticism in the way they view the founders, to open the door to admitting them into their circle of people that they can admire and thank for their work towards the perfection of the Union, even though it too was incomplete. And that completes the exercise beautifully. There's two circles out there, and he's found a way to draw them into one, and it's almost a literal implementation of this rhetorical device that's not always real clear how you execute it, and Obama has done it here in what will become textbook fashion. It was textbook fashion, but you could write a textbook about this one and about this example of the use of this rhetorical device. It's amazing, really.
No, absolutely, and bringing in the Black Lives Matter folks as well, right? Yes. Because I mean, they've become their polling numbers, for if you want to look at it that way, have become much more popular, and I think certainly the positive, and Trump's reaction to them has hurt him in this political season. I think people are, there is a majority of the American people who essentially see the movement for Black Lives as having a more positive take on where we need to go than Donald Trump. But it's the more you can improve the progressive the take of a progressive movement, the more you can improve their political standing, the more you're helping yourself as a progressive. And I think that's what President Obama was trying to do there, to say, listen, if you think the civil rights movement is good, well, Black Lives Matter is on the same side of our history as the civil rights movement is. And if you think Bull Connor and George Wallace and the people who beat John Lewis on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma in '65 are bad, Donald Trump is on the same side of history as they were. That's how you frame an election. Yeah. And that's how you use history to frame an election.
Well, it's incredible to me that anybody has difficulty making those parallels, but I guess there are some or people who are I don't know, for whatever reason are dedicated to insisting that the parallels are not there. But we do see it quite a lot in the rhetoric of a lot of Republican politicians who, for instance, sought initially to differentiate between the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s and Black Lives Matter movement now, and saying, as they did with everything, and I guess most clearly with Colin Kaepernick too, like, yes, civil rights and protest and demonstration, but this isn't the way to do it. The way to do it, you see, is like Martin Luther King and the others in the 60s did it, because I guess even they learned in high school and in history and in civics class that this was now an acceptable and admirable approach to civil rights agitation and protest. And I guess the books were closed on it. And I guess with the death of Martin Luther King, which is, of course, exactly the opposite effect or conclusion that probably he would have wanted drawn. But that somehow the books were closed on this, and all future protest based on any sort of idea of racial, either racial division or differentiation and treatment was somehow invalid. This was the last time it was allowed to do. And of course, many times when the politicians are old hands and had been around for long enough, we were hearing once the narrative was set on Martin Luther King that that he was somehow a great hero, even though these same politicians had been vilifying him during his lifetime.
Exactly.
But now, of course, the popular opinion is that he's quite a hero, and a lot of it had to do with framing him as, in similar terms, as if not explicitly as a founding father, but maybe this was the reason why it seemed so nonsensical at the time to be the last holdout politicians to be in opposition to the founding of a national holiday in honor of Dr. King, or a monument in Washington in honor of him. And I guess maybe that's because it seals their acceptance as a founder in a way. And so they fought it tooth and nail so that would never happen. But now, having lost that battle, Martin Luther King did it the right way, but everybody else now, including John Lewis, who stood in solidarity with the Black Lives Movement, they're doing it wrong. And people have been, it's been very easy for activists and their allies to point out, well, you just say every method of protest against something that you might be involved in is the wrong way to do it. You don't want to be on the streets? Fine. All right. He takes a knee during the national. No. That's impossible. You can't possibly have done that. All right. Well, how about traditional protest and marching? No. That also can't be done. You might be blocking traffic, and we have to tear gas you as a result. So there's obviously no method that they will accept. But imagine, by the way, though, I was thinking about it as you were saying it, framing John Lewis or cloaking him, I guess, in the mantle of the founders, and having an opportunity to be a part of it in some small way, but refusing to do so because he didn't go to your party. Yeah, he didn't come to my birthday party. I'm not going to go to his funeral. So that's that. And were
you doing a little Trump there? That was nice.
Yeah,
I heard a little Alec Baldwin.
There's a little bit in it. Yeah, but that was, astonishing. I could see why he might, recognize that he's not welcome necessarily at the funeral. And I don't know what they would have done if he had just shown up. He has crashed things before, but probably wise for him to not go. But of course, to make it, obviously Donald Trump's going to make it about him. Well, I didn't go because that's the most astoundingly stupid excuse for not going I could think of. Leave it to him.
Well, yeah, no, but I'm glad you mentioned Colin Kaepernick, because I didn't mention him in the piece because Obama did, but that's a great point. The attacks on the Black Lives Matter movement embodied by Colin Kaepernick were that it's unpatriotic, right?
Yeah.
Oh, how could you? You're unpatriotic. You don't love America. Obama's saying, they're the ones who do love America, without mentioning Kaepernick specifically. The movement for Black Lives are the ones who love America. They're the ones doing what is necessary to make America more perfect, and the ones standing opposed to them, they're the villains. I thought that it's great that you mentioned Kaepernick to remind us, because that really has been the attack on, one of the main attacks on the movement for Black Lives, even though it's false in many ways, is that we don't love America. And yes, maybe it's important to from a political perspective, get a hold of that rhetoric and bring it around the right way, so that you're not going to lose voters. But I still argue, again, as Obama did, that he's right. They are the ones who care about America and making America live up to its own traditions, rather than say we're going to, break away from America and start a new country in wherever that would be. It matters. How you frame that matters, and pushing back against that false charge of Kaepernick and Black Lives Matter being somehow unpatriotic is very, very important. Very important to do properly, to do it well. And I think Joe Biden gets it and will continue to do it. And I'm sure President Obama will remind him, if he needs reminding, to keep doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an important conclusion. I'm sure that he probably gave it some consideration, but probably thought it best, leave names out of it. That makes things too easy to latch onto something simplistic. But it seems pretty clear that has to be had to have been in his mind in discussing it the way he did. This is but we'll come around on this one too. I mean, what a lonely stance. Just thinking about Kaepernick himself for just a second. Certainly, he must know that his movement's been redeemed here, but I think we just saw just recently some crazy video somewhere pointing out that somebody using training canine officers and garbing their target in a Kaepernick jersey, quite obviously, quite purposely for doing that. So the sentiment is still out there, and there's still a lot of racist element that hasn't forgiven him for this, but it seems pretty clear sticking around and fighting it out is as good an indication of love of country as anything else. There has been no interest in separatism or leaving the country. I mean, and football would be a fairly simple thing to do, to say there's a whole other country with a whole other football league I could go to right to the north, which is the usual go-to if you're thinking about sports and nothing else. Could easily have just headed north for Canada to play the sport that he loved, if that's all it was really about. Clearly it's not. I'm glad that that his lonely stance has been redeemed. And then, of course, we saw the opening, as everyone was clamoring for the reopening of sports in the country. We got to have our sports back. That's going to that was going to set our economy back on its feet. And thank God for sports and the professional athletes who play it to entertain us. And then, as it turns out, we realized that a good number of them are African American, and they had something to say. If you've been waiting for us to retake the stage, we actually have a statement we'd like to make before we begin. And I'm glad they took advantage of that opportunity.
Yes, absolutely, and they've been quite eloquent for the most part, and have made their voices heard in a positive way. And
made it possible for allies of all sorts of allies to join them in this, and it was we used to be the one man kneeling, and now if you're not kneeling, you're the odd man out. And it's a physical representation of Obama's rhetoric right there.
Exactly.
Well, we've come to our second break, and you're certainly welcome to hang on if you've got the moment, if you'd like to wrap up with a couple of additional thoughts, or if it's a busy summer morning, let us know. We should plan these things in advance. But if you'd like to hang on, and we can wrap up and think a little bit about what might be coming next for you.
Sounds good.
Okay, well, we'll do that, and then we'll be back in just a minute, and that'll give us a minute to think about what we're going to say we're doing next. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Reminder, just that 1 minute break at the top of the hour, so that gives us a chance to jump back in here and we'll say we could part ways a little bit more eloquently with Ian here, as I realized having him on for the segment and then ending the segment with my own comments was probably not necessarily the best way to do it, but it always feels so abrupt when we come up on one of these breaks to just say, well, we'll cut it off from here. But I appreciate your coming on and spending this much time with us, as usual. It's a good break. I think it's great to have your very different perspective on the political events of the day, that more so than I can bring, or even with Greg's analysis. Always just adding another voice is always worth doing. But yours in particular, I've spotted some great trends and tie together some very interesting themes, so I appreciate your spending the time with us.
Well, thanks. That's very kind of you, and always a pleasure. I appreciate coming on and having a chance to talk about my writing and to go into some nice depth about the issues that we're facing as a country. It's obviously important stuff, and I'm very happy that over the next few months we're going to get to do this on a regular basis.
Yeah.
While I'm on a bit of a research leave, so I'm looking forward to doing this regularly.
Well, good. Maybe we'll contribute some thoughts towards another book on the way. We'll saddle you with another book if you don't mind.
Sure, why
not? It be read immediately.
But
yeah, I thought it made. This was a great theme to do, and we're going to have to come back to it. Particularly, as I said, there's just another round of discussion this morning about Joe Biden and his ability to relate innately to voters of color, and it's something that I think the Republicans are going to be trying desperately to frame in their own terms. And by rights, they should come nowhere close to success to being able to do this with Joe Biden, Barack Obama's vice president. But I don't think it's we could ask for a better helping hand in understanding it than yours with the history, the books that you've produced already. As you mentioned, the older of the two that we've discussed on the show, Obama's America, A Transformative Vision of Our National Identity. I now have it in front of me here, but I'm reminded of the discussions we had about your analysis of his themes in his own elections, and then how that kind of got stood on its head by the other side. When they're free to frame it their way, it does lead to craziness like the supposed, anyway, election of Donald Trump, and now we have a chance to correct that in the election of Joe Biden. And I mean, I don't think anybody has traced that evolution of the rhetoric any closer than you, so it seems perfect. We shouldn't be the only show hosting you through the election, quite honestly, but I don't want anyone to poach you away.
Well, I can make room in my schedule.
Okay, very good. I am certain it will be a busy one, really, honestly. If Republicans continue to try to make this a theme, I predict a busy summer leave for you. You'll have left from the teaching, but find your time occupied elsewhere. So it should be exciting for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's the phrase? May you live in interesting times? Is that the Chinese proverb?
That is what they say. I have always wondered whether that is a true Chinese proverb.
Yeah, who knows?
Dinesh D'Souza will tell us.
Very nice. Circling back. Always like to circle back.
Yeah, it makes it a good wrapping it up and closing the circle. It's a great way. Well, it's a good way to close out the segment. Thank you, Ian. I appreciate your time once again. And we're going to be doing it Fridays through the election, with the exception, just in case you want to make plans early, of a late August vacation Friday for you. But we'll let everyone know. And if they've showed up expecting you on the 28th, we'll let them know that it's they'll just have to hang on for you. Okay. Well, thanks. And you may be getting called away right now.
It's a robocall.
Oh,
we're ignoring
Forget
it.
them. All right.
But thanks, David. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to next Friday.
Yeah. All right. Great. Thanks very much, and we'll look forward to it as well. Ian Reifowitz, everyone. You'll find him, of course. Well, he'll be around today on Twitter. You'll see him on the front pages of Daily Kos on about will it change over the summer if your frequency or no?
I may have a few more. I should have a few more pieces during this leave than usual. That's the plan.
More, not less. Great. I would hope so.
Yes.
Terrific. Okay. Thanks, Ian, and we'll catch up with you next week. Take care.
You too.
All right. Let's get moving on to our news roundup section. I suppose we could... I'm having some... a wild texting frenzy going on in the middle of the show. But okay, I think it's not an alert from Scott telling us or from Justice telling us we're suddenly off the air. So good. I can appreciate that when it's not bad news. All right, let's see. Jumping around in Pocket, I had mentioned to you that, yes, okay, I grabbed the TMZ story on the kids there are two, I guess, who had been suspended from their Georgia high school for documenting the fact that there was zero social distancing and virtually no masking going on in these Georgia high schools. I can share that with you later on. I have news and then news about the news to share with you. I thought it was of some concern. Let's see. The first, actually, the thing that came to my attention. Oh, and let me see if I could jump back into Twitter to find where the alert came from, but I don't know if it's going to present itself all that quickly. But one of you with a sharp eye sending along to me. Oh, I bet I can scoop it up before too long using another method here. But the reemergence in the public eye of our favorite state public health officer, Dr. Action, Dr. Amy Acton, who chose to, anyway, resign from her position as state health director for Ohio. Let's see. I'll see if I can call up the tweet. Here we are. Twister Cat. Thank you very much. I'm glad I was able to call this one up, sending us the notice that Dr. Amy Acton is back, not in government, not in Ohio, but on, I don't know, would you consider it a larger stage? Sort of an interesting piece from Cleveland.com. Former Ohio Health Director Dr. Amy Acton, we love to say action here, will join Sesame Street characters, really, for a coronavirus town hall on Saturday. That's okay, not necessarily the biggest news in the world, not the most important, but I found it pretty interesting. So we'll tell you, give you a flavor for it, so in case you want to tune in or have your kids tune in. Former Ohio Department of Health Director Dr. Amy Acton will appear Saturday on a CNN town hall with characters from Sesame Street to educate kids and parents about coronavirus safety. So Saturday's a good time for that. Kids are up and watching the cartoons, and they'll all say on Saturday, I'm sure, what channel is CNN? What number on my 500 channel satellite or cable hookup is it that I've never heard of this? CNN. Acton, who resigned Thursday, is that right? Is that why? Oh, okay, this is an old article. I see. I didn't realize that. Oh, I thought this was exciting, like this Saturday they were going to do it. This was from June 12th. So we've missed it, unfortunately. But I am glad that it was brought to my attention that she did do this. So I suppose it's in the CNN archives now. Joining Sesame Street cast members like Big Bird, Elmo, and Grover, very important, in the 1 hour special moderated by Dr. Sanjay Gupta, himself a Muppet. I don't know if you knew that. Titled The ABCs of COVID-19. Acton was a fixture on the television screen during the last 3 months, well, as we know, as part of Ohio Governor Mike DeWine's coronavirus briefings, receiving praise for breaking down complex health concepts into digestible information. But of course, she faced protest outside of her own home, including as well as elsewhere, that pushed her to say, well, basically to hell with it. Screw you all if you don't want the real information that will keep Ohioans and all Americans safe in the face of this pandemic. I point this out not so much because, now that we know that we've missed the special, that's not really the key point here, but I pointed out in order to bring you the other news, which was briefly that Dr. Action was forced out of government, DeWine's government in particular, only to find out, that happened in July at some point that she had to leave, that here we are in August, finding out that Mike DeWine, who did not leave the government of Ohio, turned out to test positive for COVID yesterday. However, before I got the chance to share that news with you, the news came that he had been tested again and had tested negative. So it's a little unclear what's going on here, but I guess the news is supposed to be that on further examination, Mike DeWine, governor of Ohio, does not have COVID-19, which leads us to another interesting storyline. It turns out that the testing that was initially administered was administered because President Trump was on his way to, was it Columbus, for an event with God knows who. Who cares? I don't even know. I didn't pay any attention to it. But one of the people that was unfortunate enough to be on the list for attendance at the event was Mike DeWine. So because he would be in close proximity to Donald Trump, now we have a strict testing regimen and a testing plan in this country. Wherever Donald Trump goes, there's a strict testing protocol. Wherever anybody else goes, you're on your own. Screw you. And we don't want to hear about it, even if you do get COVID-19. Well, anyway, I don't know. What do you want to say? He passed that test in Trump's framing of it. He passed the test. He aced it. He definitely had COVID-19. So he failed his test. And but then, I'm sure he was happy to get the news that later on a second test showed that he was negative, which raises a lot of questions. One, how accurate is the testing that they're using to protect Donald Trump? And quite honestly, I don't think I give a crap, actually. I mean, I guess I hope it's terrible and that somebody who has, can we have it happen the other way and get a false negative and in comes the coronavirus and Donald Trump gets it? I don't want to say I hope that Donald Trump gets COVID-19, but I don't have to say that because I believe Donald Trump has had COVID-19 this whole time and is the one spreading it around the country. But I'm supposed to say that I don't hope that he gets it, but I hope that he gets it. Oh, well. That's out. I think that was pretty obvious. The second narrative, I guess, that emerges from this is Mike DeWine, not the closest Trump ally in the world, or the biggest Trump supporter in the world, surely. And I think probably a capable enough politician to understand that close association with Trump is deadly. I don't know how bad it would be in Ohio. You know, he's a better judge of that than I am. But many people did point out that when Donald Trump declared he was on his way to Ohio and he was damn well going to meet with the Republican governor of Ohio to talk about how stupid this whole hoax about coronavirus is, or whatever it is he was planning on doing, DeWine, who has been, as Republican governors go, pretty decent on coronavirus and much more a proponent of masking and taking a real and scientific approach to things, even if he's not everything we had hoped for, even whether with or without doctor action by his side. As it becomes clear that, look, Trump's coming and you're going to be stuck standing next to him for whatever stupid thing he says, all of a sudden a test is produced and, oh my gosh, Mike DeWine is positive for COVID-19. He can't be allowed to be anywhere near Donald Trump. A fate worse than death, right? It's exactly what every Republican politician probably praying for now. Oh my God, Trump is coming and I have to be photographed next to him. Plus I'll get COVID from him or something else. And I don't want that to happen. I know I'll claim to be COVID-19 coronavirus positive. And then, miracle of miracles, after Trump comes and goes and I miss the event, because, some stigma and difficulty comes along with a positive diagnosis for COVID-19. You'll have to self-isolate for 14 days. That's a difficult thing for anybody to do, especially for a politician, especially for the governor, supposed to be responsible for running the government. I need a quick cure. It's like World War Z, right? I'll make another reference to the movies here, though it's not a Gen X movie necessarily, but I watched it. Maybe you did too, right? I need a deadly disease that I can use as camouflage for myself while the Trump zombie is in town. But something that's curable, so I can instantly, once the job is done, I can give myself the vaccine and I don't die from the thing, right? I quote unquote, got COVID-19 this morning. In comes Trump. Sorry, have to miss the event. Coronavirus positive. Understood. No problem. I'm on my way out. Got to hit the Bedminster and go hit the golf links for 3 days. I'll see you later. Oh, I hope you get better. Best wishes for a speedy recovery. Hey, thanks very much. And you know what, Mr. President? I know how to deal with you. You did it. Your magical good wishes cured me. I don't have coronavirus anymore. I'm done. Sorry. I wish I had gotten word of that just before your arrival, but hey, as it happens, it came just after your departure. Just one of those sad things. So, okay, good for you. Well played, Mike DeWine, if that's what you're up to. And if you can find your way clear to reversing your own diagnosis with COVID-19, maybe you could find your way to back to bringing doctor action back into affairs with some appropriate protections. Or maybe this is the best way for her. She can simply consult with you in private and not be blamed for everything. Maybe that's what's going on. Who knows? All right. Changing focus, at least for the moment. Let's see. So many other important stories to get to. How about we get to this one? Igor Volsky has given us a good rundown of one of the more important stories. Had a lot of people share this one with me, and just late last night, I guess, Kate Sherrill passing this one along to me as well. Good call here, Kate. Igor is discussing the lawsuit filed by the state attorney general in New York. Let me get over to his thread. The state attorney general's office, Letitia James, filing a lawsuit seeking, I guess, if I understand it correctly, the dissolution of the National Rifle Association, the NRA. And what an interesting twist this has been. That's a good thing from the perspective of people who say things like, oh, the NRA sucks and is the worst effing thing ever to happen in American politics or American history and is basically the equivalent of demonic possession. Let's say somebody might say something like that. And you would say, good, let us be rid of this horrible thing. Let us exorcise this demon from the American body politic. And you would think, and you'd be right, but for reasons not immediately illustrated by the stories around the suit, you would think that, let's say, supporters of the National Rifle Association, gun enthusiasts, individual gun enthusiasts from around the country would react poorly to this. I love the NRA, as demonic and horrific as it is. They stand up for my right to carry around a gun and say it's an awesome and patriotic thing to do. And we were just talking about who gets to claim what's patriotic and who doesn't. This is another front on which this battle is waged all the time. So they would ordinarily, I think, oppose the motion of the New York State Attorney General to dissolve the NRA because of how much they love it and how many good excuses this group gives them for carrying around their fun toys. Well, it's a weird thing because, as it happens, the basis of the suit is that the leadership of the NRA, the official leadership, Wayne LaPierre and others, are using the NRA to siphon off all of the member dues and spend it on luxury vacations and cars and suits, etc. for themselves, and stealing all the money and not spending the bulk of that money advocating for the rights of gun owners and gun enthusiasts in the United States and everywhere, as they had enormous Russian contacts in the last couple of years. Hint, hint. But it's, in fact, it ought to be viewed by NRA members, rank and file NRA members, as intercession on their behalf. It's their dues money which is being stolen by their high-rolling executives. It doesn't necessarily mean that an NRA can't be reformulated and reformed under some different structure where the executives are not stealing money. It's just that this particular one has to be dissolved. It's just too far gone. But I'm sure they won't view it, as they should, as a protection of their interests as members of the NRA. But that's nothing new here. Hey, I always thought the NRA should be paying me for the Gun Fail series that I could illustrate to their membership better than their rah-rah rhetoric, how great their responsibility was to secure their own weapons and to take good care of them and to police themselves, as probably a good number of NRA members used to spend probably the bulk of their time online commenting on news of the day every time there was perhaps, let's say, a terrorist attack in or linked to the Middle East or Middle Eastern politics. Where are the moderate Muslims to denounce these things? Well, we might have asked, where are the moderate gun owners? We're less sure of their existence than we are of the moderate Muslims that they were calling for. But anyway, where are these people in the gun ownership community calling for cracking down on the lunatics? And they were there, but we were just playing the same game as anybody else, as they were playing with the moderate Muslim community. But anyway, I always felt that they should pay me for the Gun Fail series that would teach them more effectively than, like I said, their rah-rah rhetoric about what they needed to be doing to police their own and to make sure that their own guns were safely stored. But it never came to pass. Anyway, to find out more about what exactly is going on in this lawsuit, Igor Volsky is our best bet. He put together this thread about it. He said, I just finished reading the New York State AG's 169-page lawsuit against the NRA, and I'm shocked beyond belief at the level of corruption, lawlessness, and self-dealing. A bit of a theme here on the show. I did some of my own research in the realm of self-dealing way back when I was working on Capitol Hill. That's where I sort of first became aware of the jurisprudence around self-dealing and how powerful it could be if you really applied it. What follows, Igor says, is a thread that highlights the very worst abuses alleged by Letitia, who goes by Tish James on Twitter. Buckle in, we are instructed by Mr. Volsky, and it is the law, so please do buckle up. All right, to sum it up, Wayne LaPierre, of course, what is he, president of the NRA? I can't recall what title he holds, but LaPierre and his lieutenants spent millions of dollars in membership dues paid by NRA members who were told that their Second Amendment rights were at risk, right? Even Trump tells everybody their Second Amendment rights are at risk every chance he gets. As a matter of fact, I saw some oddball item from Daniel Dale the other day about a weird audience to whom he insisted that they, too, were freaking out about their Second Amendment rights because he thinks everybody is. It was actually an interview on Catholic television, a Catholic television channel, and he insisted that Catholics love the Second Amendment, and that was one of their chief concerns. And I don't know where he got that. Maybe it had the number 2 in it. 2 Corinthians, 2 amendments. It's probably right up your alley. I just think he thinks everybody who he hopes is conservative is a Second Amendment advocate, but I don't know. Anyway, so NRA members who were told that their Second Amendment rights were at risk, they took their dues and spent that money instead of on advocacy on lavish trips and vacations, kickbacks and sweetheart deals, all in violation not only of IRS requirements, but of NRA's rules for itself. Its own anti-corruption measures they broke as well. By the way, NRA members who pay their dues, I think that there's probably very few of them who are regular dues payers. I don't know whether they ever bill anybody monthly, yearly, what have you. But I think that the chief thrust of their dues structure is lifetime memberships. You pay a one-time fee and then consider yourself a lifetime member of the NRA. And they have a real sweetheart deal built in where at most gun shops, like actual licensed gun shops, where you might go to buy a brand new gun as opposed to buying one out of the trunk of a car somewhere or whatever, or at a gun show. But if you were to buy at a gun shop where there's a licensed dealer, very often they will throw the lifetime membership fee, roll it into the price of the gun and sign you up. You want to be a lifetime member of the NRA along with your gun. I imagine it only works for first-time gun purchasers. I imagine that multiple, repeat buyers say, I already gave at the office on that one. But that's where the bulk of their membership money comes from. Of course, the bulk of their operating expenses comes from elsewhere, but perhaps that will be addressed in here. Igor goes on saying, according to the lawsuit, LaPierre spent at least $1.3 million chartering private flights between 2016 and 2018 for himself and his family members. It turns out he wasn't even present on many of those flights, so it wasn't even necessarily that he was flying himself around. He was certainly doing that, but basically anytime his family members wanted to live the high-rolling lifestyle, even if he was going elsewhere or was too busy or was planning on shooting somebody or something like that, he would simply let you go on vacation on the NRA membership dime. From May 2015 to April 2019, the NRA incurred over $1 million in expenses for private flights where LaPierre was not a passenger. In October 2016, LaPierre authorized a private flight for his wife to fly alone from Madison, Wisconsin to Kearney, Nebraska. Do they say it as Kearney? Kearney. That's the way you would say it if you were from New Jersey, where there's a Kearney as well. Asked why she did not use a commercial airline, LaPierre testified, I think it was probably easier to fly private, more convenient. Well, I'm certain that it was easier and more convenient. The cost of the flight, $8,800. LaPierre and his family visited the Bahamas by private air charter on at least 8 occasions at a cost of over $500,000 to the NRA. You hardworking men and women who pay your dues to the NRA because you want to protect the Second Amendment, well, I don't think they even have a Second Amendment in the Bahamas. On many of those trips, LaPierre and his family were gifted the use of a 107-foot yacht owned by an NRA vendor. The NRA rails, of course, against the Hollywood elite and celebrities, but LaPierre testified he visits the Bahamas in December to attend a celebrity retreat organized by an individual who also happens to be a principal stakeholder in businesses that have business relationships with the NRA. A little bit of an elite himself, eh? Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I'm scrolling through Igor Volsky's thread here, and I guess we better get moving because it goes on for some time, and I guess we're promised that it is all astonishing material. Not that we can help but stop for commentary sometimes along the way. Number 8 here in our tweet thread. When LaPierre attended those retreats, remember the celebrity retreat in the Bahamas in December? When he attends those retreats, which are normally held annually in the Bahamas, in December, you couldn't find somewhere in America to do that. He stays at the Atlantis Resort on Paradise Island. I have been there in a very elite way. I believe. Let's see. How did I get there? Oh, yes, right. We were on a cruise back in the days when. Well, there were never really any days when cruises were healthy for you or safe. I guess we were always living from one viral infection to another. But that does sound rather fancy and elite, doesn't it? As it happens, my wife's employer at the time was, well, I don't know. You always find these people a little bit weird, but I guess a big Disney fan. And, adult Disney fans, they're interesting people. There's a lot of them, and they come in all different colors. But anyway, I mean, he seemed like a fairly normal guy. But he was actually and it still is, an arch conservative, which is a little troubling, but of an older style of arch conservative, and certainly somebody that you could actually get along with in a superficial way. He didn't need to inject, like Donald Trump, the insistence that he be able to insult you in horrible ways and have you, kiss his ring and lick his boots. Anyway, he wasn't that kind of guy. He was a big Disney fan, and his thing was his company, when he owned it personally, he's since sold it, but for the 30 years or so, apparently, that he owned the company, on the 10-year anniversaries, he would celebrate by taking the entirety of his payroll and their families on some sort of Disney excursion. Took them to Disney World in Florida. I don't know what else. I mean, there were 2, I guess, other things. And the 10th anniversary, 20th, and I guess the 30th. And by the 30th anniversary of the company, I think that's when we were on board. And the big retreat was employees and their families, on a 3-day Disney Cruise. By that point, they had the Disney Cruise Line running from out of Florida, and they made their way to Bahamas, and there was a day stop in at the Atlantis Resort. So, all right. So I think we spent about 2 hours at the Atlantis Resort. It was a lot of fun. Interesting to see. Didn't do any gambling. Walked all over Paradise Island. In fact, walked so far all over Paradise Island that I became rather severely dehydrated and did not feel well that night. In addition to the nausea of severe dehydration, we were on a cruise ship after all. But that's neither here nor there. Neither was LaPierre there, I think, at the time I was there. But that's what they do. They go to this retreat at Atlantis Resort on Paradise Island. Again, I should get back, stay focused. Don't worry, Igor Volsky tells us, LaPierre often visits the Bahamas in the summer as well. Ah, good. During these trips, he stays on a 108-foot yacht. It's up a foot since the last time we mentioned it, I think, named Illusions. It has 4 staterooms, a 16-foot jet boat, and 2 jet skis. LaPierre describes Illusions as a big yacht, and he's right about that, with a crew and a chef. LaPierre has never disclosed his use of the yacht on NRA financial disclosure questionnaires that he, as an officer and ex officio director of the NRA, must submit to the NRA secretary annually. Oops question mark, I guess, on this one. We don't know whether it's an oops or not. But yeah, even on the internal anti-corruption controls that the NRA maintains for itself, he cheated. LaPierre testified he has never received a gift of value in excess of $250 from an NRA contractor or employee of an NRA contractor. But of course, LaPierre's use of the yacht constituted just that, a gift from an NRA contractor in excess of $250, you can believe that, requiring disclosure under NRA policy. LaPierre also testified that he has stayed on Illusions during 2 European trips for the purpose of recruiting celebrities that he hates, right, for the NRA. Well, I like those kinds of celebrities. A very gimmitarian approach to everything, of course. NRA uses a dedicated travel agency, but they're not good enough for LaPierre. New York State AG's lawsuit reveals that LaPierre used his own travel consultant and pays them exorbitant fees with, of course, NRA membership dollars. So, in 2014, the fixed fee for LaPierre's travel agent's services, $15,000 a month. You understand what's happening here? He was saying to the NRA, you need to give me to pay my travel consultant $15,000 a month to handle my travel. That's on top of our paying another travel agency as the official travel agency of the NRA. If anyone else wants to travel on quote-unquote official business through the NRA, we got to be paying this other travel agency to handle their travel. For me personally, $15,000 a month just for this person to handle my travel. That does sound rather exorbitant. In May 2015, LaPierre's travel consultant's monthly fee increased to $19,000, obviously market-based, right? From August of 2014 to January of 2020, the NRA paid LaPierre's travel consultant more than $13.5 million. Your job? Arrange travel for Wayne LaPierre. Where? Bahamas. When? Summer. Once in the summer, once in the winter. Where is he going to stay? Paradise Island, Atlantis Hotel in the winter, and he's staying on his friend's yacht in the summer. Okay, that'll be $13.5 million, please. And they paid it. And if you're unhappy about that, then you should be happy about Letitia James filing suit on your behalf. But curiously, they're not. In 2018, the NRA paid LaPierre's travel consultant $2,630,531.71. Can you believe the 71 cents? That's an outrage. I want that back. In the first 6 months of 2019 alone, I guess maybe that's the last data they got, the NRA paid LaPierre's travel consultant $1,007,597.80. I mean, come on. If that wasn't enough, the NRA also reimburses LaPierre for exorbitant personal expenses. Let's see if any of these are really weird or gross. Between 2013 and 2017, LaPierre was reimbursed for more than $1.2 million in expenses, including some of LaPierre's personal expenses, such as $65,000 for Christmas gifts for his staff, donors, and friends. Merry Christmas! And in the Christmas spirit, I stole these gifts for you. There was also a reimbursement of $648.55 in gifts from Neiman Marcus, popularly known as Needless Markup. Neiman Marcus to that highly paid travel consultant. Here's a $650 gift for you in case the $13 million in cash wasn't enough. And also a reimbursement of $1,590 in Christmas gifts to the co-founder of Ackerman. What is that? Ackerman, is that the Ackerman Security Company? I wouldn't be surprised if that was. I don't know who that is, but look it up because I got more tweets to get through here. Each of the gifts was substantially in excess of the $25 limit permitted by the IRS for business gifts, to say the least. Fancy hotel rooms for family members were also paid for by NRA dues money, $12,332.75 for his niece's 8-night stay at the Four Seasons Hotel in Dallas, Texas. Extremely important that his niece be able to stay there for a week. Speaking of nieces, I didn't mention this at the opening of the show. Important news in my world. I have a new niece, and I will tell you this, Elise, who's our new niece, you can't find her on the internet yet. She's 1 day old. But I hope one day to be able to give you a $12,000 8-night stay at the Four Seasons Hotel. Maybe not so much Dallas, Texas, but anywhere in the world. I'm not promising to be able to do it, but the minute I get the ability to steal money from the NRA's dues fund, let's say that'll be the first thing I will get for you. Even before the rest of my nieces and nephews, who probably will be angered by this, not just by their keen sense of justice, but because they were in line before you. But okay, they're very giving people, and you'll find you're welcome in their company. Congratulations to the parents who are on the internet, and maybe I ought not to mention them because you never know what kind of weirdos will target them through this show. But anyway, congratulations and welcome to Elise. Hope you get the $12,000 hotel stay one day. In addition to that, though, Wayne LaPierre in 2016 and 17 was reimbursed over $38,000 in expenses for his niece's airfare and lodging. He really loves this niece. He's very close to her. We can make reference to more Gen X favorite movies out there. I guess. I mean, I don't want to say anything untoward about his niece, but isn't that what the manager of the hotel in Pretty Woman was initially told as a polite excuse for why Julia Roberts was staying in Richard Gere's hotel room? I don't know. We got she's very close to this niece, is all I'm saying. Between 2009 and 2017, LaPierre expensed over $100,000 in membership fees for a golf club located in the Washington, D.C. area. $100,000. Washington, D.C. area. Let's see. That could be Trump National. Could be a lot of people were into Robert Trent Jones golf club. Although $100,000 between 2009 and 2017, not the whole membership fees for clubs of that stature. So I don't know. We'll see if we can find out. LaPierre has a separate budget, by the way, to pay consultants. It won't surprise you that a lot of these consultant contracts were processed and paid for without any written contracts in place, although that probably breaks NRA rules as well. And oh, how well those consultants made out. Treasurer of the NRA, the treasurer. How do you get away with all of these sorts of crazy expenditures and reimbursements? Well, if the treasurer is taking kickbacks on it or is involved in the scheme, I guess things will be a lot easier. NRA Treasurer Woody Phillips entered into an independent consulting agreement to continue to be paid by the NRA following his retirement. NRA paid Phillips $30,000 per month for 5 years for, quote, consulting services. Point this at somebody and pull the trigger. That's how you kill them with a gun. Good consulting. Woody, here's $30,000. See you next month. Spoiler. Oh, We'll see. Phillips provided no actual consulting services to the NRA under this agreement. He didn't even tell them how to shoot a gun. The lawsuit concludes payments made to Phillips under this agreement are ex gratia payments and a waste of charitable assets. Remember, they claim to be a nonprofit. Isn't that right? Josh Powell, NRA's former chief of staff and the executive vice president of operations, convinced an NRA contractor to hire his wife and then passed through her entire monthly fee of $30,000, yes, $30,000 per month, to the NRA. How do you like that? Convincing an NRA contractor to hire them at $30,000 a month. Gosh, we don't have that kind of money to spend on your wife. Don't worry, we'll reimburse you for that payment to her by stealing NRA membership dues to do it. I mean, why don't you want this lawsuit brought, NRA members? You won't be surprised to learn that Powell not only disregarded his disclosure obligations under the NRA's conflict of interest policy, but took affirmative steps to hide the conflict from the NRA officer he was supposed to disclose it to. I'd hide it too. It's illegal. I just wouldn't have done it. In 2017, Powell asked another NRA vendor to add his father, a photographer, to its photographer rotation for NRA events. The vendor complied with Powell's request and proceeded to pass through at least $93,000 in expenses for his father's services to the NRA. Powell is a piece of work, says Igor. In 2018, the NRA settled a sexual discrimination claim made against Powell for $89,000. A couple months later, Powell was accused of sexual harassment. LaPierre didn't launch an investigation or take any disciplinary action regarding Powell's behavior, but it seems to have made the NRA quite a playground for himself. LaPierre's senior assistant joined the NRA with a criminal record of embezzling from a nonprofit where she had worked in the 1980s. You see why she was hired? I am going to embezzle from a nonprofit in the 2000s, and I need your help. Can you tell me how best to get away with it? Well, this isn't the way, because he got caught. At some point in the 2000s, LaPierre's assistant was accused of diverting money from the NRA to use for personal expenses. That is a shock, considering that she had done it before. Her corporate card was taken away, but she continued to have access to and use other NRA employees' corporate credit cards. What could go wrong with that? Asks Igor. In 2012, LaPierre's senior assistant had the NRA pay for $18,000 in expenses incurred in connection with her son's wedding in Minnesota. These wedding expenses were never reimbursed by LaPierre's senior assistant to the NRA. LaPierre's senior assistant also loves black cars. On a single day, somehow, she incurred over $1,100 in black car bills for her husband's trips to and from airports. Sounds like he didn't fly, he just drove between airports. On another occasion, she incurred $1,300 in black car bills, limousines essentially, to transport him from New York to Washington, D.C. They have airplanes for that, or trains. And the NRA's biggest vendor, here's Ackerman. It was Ackerman McQueen. Oh, yeah, they were a public relations firm. Now I remember them. The NRA reported paying Ackerman, we'll say, shorten it here, $20.3 million in 2017 and $31.9 million in 2018 for public relations and advertising services. Over this period, Ackerman did not transmit receipts or any other documents supporting its expenses. Usually kind of a requirement. The NRA agreed to an arrangement with Ackerman McQueen whereby it paid invoices with minimal detail and little supporting documentation. Ackerman also paid for a variety of unrelated out-of-pocket expenses and passed those expenses through to the NRA. I think we actually have heard these charges before. The NRA used this arrangement to conceal expenditures by the NRA executives, including LaPierre, many of which were personal or lacked documentation required by the IRS. Ackerman billed the NRA for out-of-pocket expenses by submitting non-particularized invoices that aggregated the expenses into a lump sum and provided no details on the nature or purpose of the expenses. The effect of the pass-through expense arrangement with Ackerman was that these expenses would be paid for by the NRA without written approvals, without receipts, and without supporting business purpose documentation. With respect to LaPierre, the false reporting exposed the NRA to tax and penalty liabilities and permitted him to file false personal tax returns with the IRS. Some examples of those pass-throughs, just for fun, let's read them. Paying for meals for NRA executives at upscale Italian restaurants. NRA directed Ackerman to purchase memberships to a members-only cigar bar for some NRA execs, and Ackerman paid and NRA reimbursed more than $250,000 to that LaPierre travel consultant as well. He was rooting money everywhere for this person. At NRA conventions, Ackerman paid for LaPierre's family to stay at a luxury private hotel apart from the host hotel at which NRA employees and board members were staying. These costs were billed to the NRA as pass-through expenses. He was too good for the rest of the hotel where the rest of the board was staying, much less the members if they were going to the convention. LaPierre directed Ackerman McQueen to pay for expenses related to NASCAR events, country music events, and even medical visits, and bill those through the NRA as well. The executive director of Advancement also took part in the corruption, frequently staying at luxury hotels like the Four Seasons, the St. Regis, the Ritz-Carlton, and the Beverly Hills Hotel. Remember those Hollywood celebrities they hate so much? He routinely stayed in suites costing over $1,500 a night. LaPierre's wife would incur thousands of dollars of expenses for hair and makeup, which were billed through Ackerman McQueen as out-of-pocket expenses. May 2016, May of 2017, NRA paid one artist $16,359 for 3 events for LaPierre's wife. Okay. LaPierre regularly directed the NRA to pay officers, directors, and former employees millions of dollars in consulting agreements without board approval. In late 2016, then NRA Executive Director of General Operations was terminated. NRA security escorted him out. Afterward, LaPierre directed the NRA to enter into an agreement under which the NRA agreed to pay this same person that was escorted out of the building $60,000 a month over a 2-year period, I guess to keep him quiet about something. LaPierre testified that he was under the impression that it was a severance agreement, and he authorized it out of concern that the former executive director might disparage the NRA. And who could do that? The NRA paid a former NRA employee $30,000 a month. This seems to be a popular figure. As a fundraising consultant, the former employee admitted that he did not keep accurate records of any fundraising he conducted. He agreed that his position was not subject to outcomes or any form of metrics. I'm a fundraising consultant, and it doesn't matter if I raise any funds. The NRA entered into a post-employment agreement with its managing director of affinity and licensing. The individual retired from the NRA in January of 2016, but was still paid a full year's salary, $630,000, and paid by the NRA in addition to that after his retirement, $713,000 in 2017, $535,000 in 2018. LaPierre has his own post-retirement contract. It provides for payments in excess of $1 million a year after LaPierre's tenure as executive vice president ends due to retirement or losing a re-election bid. So if you actually vote him out because he's a corrupt bastard who's stealing all the money, he will limit himself to stealing only $1 million per year afterwards. LaPierre testified that he did not know whether his post-employment contract was disclosed to the NRA board. The NRA was obligated to continue to pay LaPierre for years after he lost re-election or retired at a rate higher than his compensation had been as executive vice president. So if you lose re-election, you actually get paid more. Interesting that he chose not. Although it's such a gravy train, why would you choose not to stay? LaPierre effectively dominates and controls the NRA board as a whole through his control of business, patronage, and special payment opportunities for board members. He paid at least 5 board members for services that they were likely never rendering. LaPierre effectively ousted the former NRA president. Remember when he was briefly president? Oliver North. Why? Well, it happened after he began to review the NRA's expenses and business operations. Maybe even with an eye toward how can I get a piece of this for myself. But We can't have him sticking around and complaining about these things, so out he goes. Board members who publicly expressed concern about the NRA's actions were denied the committee assignments they requested, and some ended up resigning. So I think we've come to the end of Igor's tweet thread about it. It basically gives you a fairly complete picture, I would think, of what was going on there in terms of the corruption. And what a gravy train it was. And I'm not surprised that they found their way into strange and otherwise inexplicable cooperation with Russian intelligence assets, allegedly. Both alleged that they are intelligence assets, I guess, and that they came into close contact and working relationship. But all the allegations are out there. We've heard about them before, that the Russians funneled an enormous amount of money into American elections through the NRA. And clearly there's no paperwork going on here, so it would have been an easy enough thing to do. And you might have wondered, with all of those piles, with the pile of cash that they're sitting on from dues, and without very much to actually do with that money, why do they need so much money from Russian sources? And the answer is they were stealing it hand over fist, which has always been kind of a weird idiom. Never really sure where that came from. But stealing the money hand over fist left them in a precarious position, I suppose, and subject to the allure of the millions of dollars coming in from foreign sources. So I don't know. It was a very strange situation. I'll be very interested to see whether rank and file NRA members changed their tune at all, having heard all of these allegations, and in some cases testified to by Wayne LaPierre himself. You don't think that there's room for them to come to the conclusion that the NRA executive directorship has to go, but that the organization once had a noble purpose and that they might reorganize it under that or another name? They can't come to the conclusion that the New York State AG is onto something here. We'll see as time goes on whether they come around to that position. But very interesting and well covered. Thanks, Igor, for thumbing through all of that and laying out the basics for us so that we can point and laugh. All right. Just a few more minutes here before we exit and hand the microphones over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Not sure exactly what he's got on tap, although we could go check. We'll be checking in on that in just a few minutes. Other stories of interest that you might want to take with you for the weekend. BuzzFeed's report on Facebook, pardon me, firing an employee who collected evidence of right-wing pages? Right-wing Facebook pages. I'm like, page, I think of Capitol Hill pages. What's going on here? Facebook fired an employee who collected evidence of right-wing pages getting preferential treatment. What kind of preferential treatment? I guess what it boils down to here, maybe here is in the subheader. Facebook employees collected evidence showing the company is giving right-wing pages preferential treatment when it comes to misinformation. And they're worried about how the company will handle the president's falsehoods in an election year. In other words, when they pass on misinformation, they basically get a pass on this stuff. But if anyone accuses a left-leaning or liberal-leaning page of the same, whether true or not, they come down like a ton of bricks on them, and it appears to be internal company policy to do so. They may be coming down on the liberal-leaning pages like a ton of bricks, not so much because they may also be conservative at heart and doing it for political reasons. But I think it might even be more likely that they're doing it in order to show that they are, quote unquote, tough on misinformation, which everybody wants them to be heading into an election year. But they are not tough on conservative misinformation because conservatives squawk when that kind of stuff happens to them. And they complain in ways that they fear would move public opinion against Facebook. In other words, they fear the threats of Republicans and laugh if there ever were any threats leveled by Democrats, and I'm not certain that there ever are any. All right. Well, that's a big story that we'll be hearing more about over the weekend and into next week. Plenty of other things on tap for Monday. I see word from Greg that maybe by Tuesday his situation will be restored. I don't know if we can expect him on Monday, but they do have a nice long-ish weekend, it's the same length as any other weekend, I guess, to work on restoring power and internet access. We also have, since we have a minute or two, I will give you that bit I told you about Daniel Dale reporting about Trump's appearance on Catholic TV. I think we can do it in a minute or so. Trump's closing message to Catholic TV station EWTN. I'm not certain what that's all about, but at any rate, apparently he was given a huge softball, open-ended question, asked basically, if there was one message you wanted to say to our viewers, Catholics, right, what would it be right now? And this is Trump's idea of what to say to Catholics with an open field in front of him. Well, I think anybody having to do with, frankly, religion, but certainly the Catholic Church, you have to be with President Trump, right? When it comes to pro-life, when it comes to all of the things, whatever the hell they are, these people are going to take all your rights away, including Second Amendment, because, Catholics like their Second Amendment. So I saved the Second Amendment. If I wasn't here, you wouldn't have a Second Amendment. And pro-life is your big thing. And you won't be on that side of the issue, I guarantee. If the radical left, because they're going to take over. They're going to push him, whoever it is around like he was nothing. Maybe he means Biden himself. I don't know. I don't know what he thinks the relationship between Catholics and the Second Amendment is, and I don't want to know. But maybe Justice Putnam knows. He's coming up next with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, featuring stories I will try to cram in after this.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right, what's on tap? The Kodak deal is a pump and dump stock scheme created by the U.S. government. We are all about that. Maryland County health officials defied Governor Larry Hogan's order to keep schools closed. That should be interesting. And the head of the FEC called on McConnell to fund his election now to avoid devastating failure.